There comes a moment when fear no longer defines the shape of your world, when the noise, the tension, the endless anticipation of what might go wrong finally begins to lose its gravity. It's not that life becomes suddenly easier, it's that you begin to realize the universe has never responded to your control. It has always responded to your energy. Everything rearranges when you stop feeding fear. The timing of events, the texture of your relationships, the flow of opportunities. These do not bend to willpower, they bend to openness. When you release the clenched energy of worry, life begins to move again. Not because you tried harder, but because you stopped blocking the current. Fear is contraction. It narrows the lens through which you perceive reality. It convinces you that safety lies in holding tighter, planning deeper, predicting more. But the universe, this vast intelligent field of consciousness, does not flow toward control. It flows toward coherence. It flows toward resonance. And resonance is born from relaxation, from trust, from the quiet allowing that says, I am no longer resisting what is. You begin to see that fear has never been a protector. It has only been a lens, one that distorts light and calls the distortion truth. When you let go of fear, that lens cracks. The energy that once coiled in tension unravels and returns to its natural state, harmony. And in that harmony, reality reconfigures. It's not poetic exaggeration, it's energetic law. Frequency meets frequency, vibration calls vibration. When the inner vibration shifts, the external form must follow. The human nervous system is an exquisite translator of energy. It senses threat long before thought interprets it. But when you live chronically afraid, your body begins to mistake the ordinary flow of life for danger. It doesn't mean you are broken. It means your system learned to survive. Yet survival is not the same as living, and the universe cannot deliver abundance into a field that is wired for defense. So, the rearrangement begins not out there, but in here, inside the subtle spaces where your energy has been frozen by old emotion, old memory, old protection. The moment you stop clinging, you notice movement again. Events unfold differently. People respond differently. Paths open that were invisible before. This is the quiet rearrangement, not the universe changing to please your demand, but reality reorganizing around your peace. The moment fear dissolves, alignment begins. The architecture of your life bends toward balance, not because you forced it, but because you finally allowed it. Fear builds structures, invisible ones. They are made of thoughts, expectations, and the illusion of safety. Control is the architecture of fear. It appears intelligent, responsible, even mature. But underneath, it is the nervous system trying to stop time. You build schedules, plans, routines. You calculate outcomes, rehearse conversations, anticipate every possible turn. You call it preparation, but often it is protection. The mind creates walls, thinking that stillness means danger, that unpredictability means failure, but nothing alive remains rigid. The tree that does not bend breaks. The river that refuses to flow stagnates. And yet, humanity has learned to worship control, as if order could exist without movement. Control is the ego's favorite disguise for fear. It whispers, if I can predict it, I can survive it. If I can manage every detail, I can prevent pain. And in the process, the spirit becomes imprisoned within the mind's architecture. Each thought becomes a brick, each plan, a barrier, each fear, another layer of defense between you and the living pulse of the universe. But the truth is this: control is resistance, and resistance blocks the rearrangement that life is always trying to offer. You think you're maintaining stability, but you are only maintaining tension. The nervous system holds its breath, the body stiffens, the mind loops. You confuse the stillness of control with the peace of alignment, but they are not the same. Peace allows movement. Control forbids it. The universe cannot breathe through a clenched system. Every time you try to force a result, you interrupt the intelligence that already knows the way. You override the natural order, believing you can engineer timing, relationships, outcomes. But control is the refusal to trust that you are part of something infinitely wiser. And that refusal becomes separation from your body, from the moment, from the flow of existence itself. True order does not come from managing life. It comes from merging with it. When fear fades, control loosens. When control loosens, awareness expands. And what once seemed chaotic begins to reveal its hidden symmetry. You see that the universe has always been in motion, not against you, but for you. The more tightly you hold, the less you can receive, because the architecture of control may feel like safety, but it is only a beautifully decorated cage, one built from the misunderstanding that you are alone in creating stability. When the walls finally fall, you discover something profound. Life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be collaborated with, and that collaboration begins the moment you stop holding your breath. The human body is a living archive of memory. Every experience you've ever had, every disappointment, every shock, every unspoken fear is stored not just in the mind, but in the cells, the muscles, the rhythm of your breath. The nervous system learns to associate certain sensations with danger, and once it learns, it doesn't easily forget. Fear becomes a loop, not because you choose it, but because your biology believes it's keeping you alive. The heart races, the body contracts, the mind interprets the signal as threat, and so the cycle repeats. You feel unsafe not because the present moment is dangerous, but because your body is still echoing the past. This is the illusion of the nervous system. It mistakes repetition for truth. It can't tell the difference between memory and immediacy. If a pattern of fear has been wired long enough, the body begins to live as if the past is happening now, and so you react instead of respond. You brace before life even reaches you. The survival system activates before awareness has a chance to breathe. This illusion is subtle. It whispers in tension held in the shoulders, in shallow breaths, in the mind's need to predict. You might not call it fear. You might call it being responsible, staying prepared, keeping it together. But beneath those phrases lives the same vibration, defense. And defense, however noble, keeps the body from openness. The nervous system was designed to protect you from tigers, not from thoughts. Yet in modern life, the threats are internal. The tiger is replaced by uncertainty, by rejection, by the fear of loss, and the same ancient reflex fires. Adrenaline rises, cortisol floods, energy freezes. This chemical storm becomes a silent background hum, the hum of survival pretending to be normal. But here's the deeper truth. You cannot evolve while your body is still in survival. Consciousness cannot expand in a system that believes it's under attack. So long as the nervous system identifies safety with control, you will keep recreating what feels familiar, even if it hurts. The body will choose a known pain over an unknown peace. The illusion begins to dissolve when awareness enters the body. When you slow your breath, when you feel the ground beneath you, when you stop believing every signal of anxiety means danger, you start to see the space between sensation and story. And in that space, freedom begins. The nervous system is not your enemy. It is your messenger. It doesn't need to be silenced. It needs to be understood. When you listen without fear, the loop unwinds, and the body, finally, remembers what peace feels like. Fear is not always loud. It doesn't always arrive as panic or trembling. Most of the time, it hides beneath ordinary thoughts, subtle, almost invisible. It speaks through hesitation, through tension in the jaw, through the quickening of a thought that says, "What if it doesn't work out?" This is the subtle frequency of fear. Not dramatic, but pervasive. It colors perception without announcing itself. When fear is present, everything becomes slightly distorted. It narrows awareness, shrinks possibility, bends reality toward what the mind already expects. Fear turns life into a mirror of one's defenses. You don't see what is, you see what you're protecting yourself from. And because energy responds to attention, the vibration of fear quietly organizes events to confirm its own belief. That's why worry feels like prediction. It's not foreseeing the future, it's shaping it. The nervous system interprets fear as contraction. Muscles tighten, the breath shortens, and the subtle energy field around the body becomes dense. In that density, intuition fades. You can't hear the quiet voice of guidance because the static of survival is too loud. The flow of life, once fluid and self-correcting, begins to fragment. Synchronicities disappear, inspiration dulls, timing misaligns. Not as punishment, but as reflection. The universe mirrors your frequency so that you can become aware of what you're transmitting. Fear has many disguises: anxiety, control, indecision, overthinking, even perfectionism. All of them vibrate at the same tone: resistance. And resistance blocks flow. It is like trying to receive a broadcast while jamming the signal with your own interference. The more you try to manage energy from a fearful state, the more entangled you become in your own static. Yet, beneath fear, there is always movement, because fear by its nature is temporary. It is energy, and energy can shift. The moment you become aware of fear's frequency, you are no longer fully identified with it. Awareness itself is the higher vibration. You don't need to suppress fear or fight it. You only need to feel it without fusion, to witness its texture, the trembling, the contraction, without believing its story. That simple awareness begins to loosen the energetic knot. As the frequency of fear dissolves, your perception expands again. Colors feel more vivid, time feels slower, sensations feel alive. This is not imagination, it's regulation. Your nervous system is remembering coherence, and your energy field is aligning with flow. Fear isolates, presence reconnects, and in that reconnection, intuition returns. The guidance that once felt silent begins to whisper again. The subtle frequency of fear doesn't need to be conquered. It only needs to be seen clearly enough to lose its power. Because in the language of the universe, fear is static, and love is signal. When you let the static fade, the signal of life becomes unmistakable. There's a point where effort turns into interference, where striving becomes noise, where the harder you try to fix life, the more you tangle its threads. And then, in exhaustion, you stop. Not because you've given up, but because something inside you whispers, "Let it be." That whisper is not weakness. It is intelligence. It is the ancient knowing that harmony cannot be forced. It must be allowed. Allowing is not passive. It is not inaction. It is the highest form of participation, one that operates through resonance, not resistance. It begins when you stop identifying with the need to control and start aligning with the natural current of energy already moving through everything. When resistance dissolves, rearrangement begins. Because energy, by nature, seeks balance. It reorganizes itself when you stop fighting its flow. Every emotion, every challenge, every delay, all of it carries information. Allowing means listening without resistance. It means feeling the discomfort without labeling it wrong. It means releasing the belief that peace depends on the outcome. And the moment you stop opposing what is, the current of life begins to self-correct. That is the alchemy of allowing. Tension transforms into guidance. Confusion turns into clarity. Chaos reveals its hidden pattern. Science calls it coherence. Spirit calls it surrender. Both describe the same phenomenon. When the nervous system relaxes, the field of consciousness expands. Your perception widens, and you begin to sense alignment, a subtle intelligence arranging details far beyond your comprehension. You notice synchronicities, soft nudges, divine timing, not because they suddenly appear, but because you've stopped filtering them through fear. Allowing is not about doing nothing. It's about no longer doing from fear. You still act, but your actions come from presence, not panic. You still move, but the movement feels guided, not grasping. You begin to experience life as partnership, a dance, not a demand. And in that dance, effort becomes effortless. The universe reorganizes itself around your openness. Paths unfold, not because you forced them, but because you stopped resisting the natural expansion that was already trying to happen. To allow is to trust that intelligence flows through you, not against you. To allow is to recognize that the same force moving galaxies into orbit is moving you into alignment. And when you stop interfering, you start to feel that current again. A rhythm beneath thought, a stillness beneath movement. That is where transformation begins. Not by adding more effort, but by removing resistance. When you allow, you return to harmony. And harmony is not something you create. It is what remains when fear is gone. The mind is a beautiful servant, but a restless master. It was designed to interpret reality, not to control it. Yet somewhere along the way, It began to confuse awareness with authority. It started believing that if it could predict everything, it could protect you from pain. This is how the ego was born, not as an enemy, but as a frightened child of consciousness, desperate to ensure your survival. The ego thrives on tension. It needs a problem to exist. Without uncertainty to analyze or danger to defend against, it begins to lose its identity. So it creates subtle friction, overthinking, comparison, doubt, what ifs, just to feel alive. But the paradox is this: the more it tightens its grip, the less life can move. The mind's mechanism becomes a feedback loop of fear. It scans for threat, finds none, and still convinces you to prepare for one. This is not intelligence. It is habit. The same circuitry that once helped the body survive now keeps the spirit confined. It plays memories like warning alarms, overlays the past on the present, and calls it logic. You begin to live in anticipation rather than awareness. Every plan becomes an attempt to manage the unknown. Every thought becomes a rehearsal for a future that never arrives. The ego does not understand peace. Peace makes it irrelevant, but awareness does not fight the mind. It observes it. It sees the mechanism for what it is, a reflex, not reality. When you become aware of thought without identifying with it, you interrupt the pattern. You start to notice that fear is not born from the moment itself, but from the mind's interpretation of it. You realize that the same mind that creates the storm cannot be trusted to measure the calm, and in that realization, the grip loosens. From a psychological view, this is neuroplasticity in motion, the rewiring of your internal response. From a spiritual view, it is awakening, the remembering that consciousness is not bound by thought. Both describe the same transformation, awareness replacing reactivity. You stop needing to predict because you've learned to perceive. You stop needing to control because you've learned to trust. The ego may still whisper warnings, but they no longer command you. You begin to witness the machinery of the mind, the gears of fear, the wheels of worry, turning but without power over your stillness. The more you observe, the more the system reprograms itself, not through force, but through understanding. This is the quiet revolution of consciousness. When you see the mechanism clearly, it loses its ability to define you. The mind remains, but it softens. It no longer leads, it listens. And in that listening, awareness takes its rightful place as the true intelligence guiding your life. Beneath the surface calm of the conscious mind, there is another layer, quiet, ancient, and often unacknowledged. It speaks in the language of emotion, not thought. It remembers everything you've turned away from, the grief you minimized, the anger you repressed, the shame you buried. This is the shadow, not darkness, but disowned light. It is the part of you that learned to hide because it was once unwelcome. The shadow doesn't vanish when ignored. It waits. It waits in the body, in the muscles, in the pauses between words. It waits behind your triggers, your judgments, your recurring fears. And when life grows still enough, it speaks, not to haunt you, but to free you. Because what you resist internally cannot be rearranged externally. The universe mirrors the vibrations you suppress. If fear remains unacknowledged within, it continues to shape your reality without. The shadow's voice is not an enemy's voice. It is the voice of the wounded protector, repeating the old warning. Don't be seen. Don't be vulnerable. Don't feel too much. These are the phrases that built the walls of survival. They once kept you safe, but now they keep you small. Fear grows in the places where light has not yet reached. And until awareness turns toward those corners, the pattern repeats. No matter how spiritual or self-aware the surface appears. Psychologically, the shadow is the unintegrated self. Spiritually, it is the gateway to wholeness. Because every emotion you suppress becomes energy that needs expression. Anger, when acknowledged, becomes clarity. Sadness, when felt, becomes compassion. Shame, when illuminated, becomes humility. What was once heavy becomes holy the moment you stop resisting its presence. To listen to the shadow is to reclaim your power. It is to look at fear not as a curse, but as a signal. Each trigger reveals an area of fragmentation. A place within you still asking for love. When you meet it with awareness instead of avoidance, it begins to dissolve. The nervous system relaxes, The energy locked in suppression begins to circulate again. And as that energy flows, you regain access to intuition, creativity, and authentic strength. The shadow doesn't disappear through fighting or affirmations. It dissolves through inclusion. When you stop dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts, you return to coherence. Integration is not about becoming more positive, it's about becoming whole. And wholeness has no fear of itself. So the next time fear rises, don't silence it. Listen. Behind its trembling voice lies the truth it was always trying to protect. Once that truth is seen, the shadow no longer needs to guard the gate. It steps aside, and the energy it once held in defense now becomes light, guiding you back to yourself. Surrender is not defeat. It is not giving up. It is giving into alignment. It is the quiet moment when your nervous system stops fighting reality and begins to move with it. From the outside, surrender looks like stillness, but within, it is the most intelligent recalibration a human being can experience. Science calls it coherence, the harmonious synchronization between the heart, the brain, and the body. When you surrender, your internal rhythms begin to align. The heartbeat slows, the breath deepens, and neural patterns shift from chaos to clarity. In this state, the body no longer prepares for survival. It prepares for creation. The nervous system, once trapped in defense, opens like a bridge, allowing energy to flow freely through it. This is not mystical theory. It's measurable biology. Stress chemistry subsides. The brain's default mode network quiets. You move from fight or flight to flow. And in that shift, the field of consciousness surrounding you begins to reorganize. Spirituality calls this same state surrender. It is when you stop identifying as the doer and begin to recognize yourself as the vessel. The energy that creates worlds is not separate from you. It moves through you. And when resistance fades, it begins to express itself as timing, intuition, synchronicity. The universe doesn't reward struggle. It responds to resonance. Surrender is the alignment of resonance with reality. Psychologically, surrender is the nervous system remembering safety. Spiritually, it is the soul remembering trust. Both point to the same truth. When the body and consciousness enter coherence, life rearranges without force. What once required effort begins to unfold organically. The people, opportunities, and insights you once chased begin to flow toward you, because the energy of fear pushes reality away, but the energy of surrender magnetizes it back. This is why moments of deep release often bring spontaneous clarity. When the body stops gripping, the mind stops spinning. And in that space of peace, answers appear not through logic, but through resonance. You don't think your way into solutions, you align your way into them. The intelligence of the universe is always broadcasting. Surrender simply tunes you back into the frequency. Surrender is the meeting point of science and spirit. It is the bridge between nervous system regulation and divine flow. It is where serotonin meets stillness, where breath becomes prayer, where calm becomes command. Because the moment you stop resisting what is, you return to what's always been guiding you. And from that place, life no longer needs to be managed. It simply unfolds in coherence with your peace. The science of surrender is the technology of alignment, and the greatest discovery is not how to control the universe, but how to harmonize with the intelligence that was always carrying you. When fear leaves the body, reality begins to rearrange itself, not through magic, but through resonance. What you perceive as the world is not separate from you. It is an echo of your inner state. Every event, every coincidence, every delay or opening, all of it mirrors the vibration you hold. When fear dissolves, the mirror clears. Life stops reflecting distortion and starts revealing design. This is the reordering of reality. The moment the inner field stabilizes, the outer field responds. Situations that once felt chaotic begin to align with ease. People who matched your pain gently drift away, and those who resonate with your peace naturally appear. Not by decision, but by frequency. Energy attracts its equivalent, and when fear is no longer your signal, the universe no longer responds with lessons in defense. Psychologically, this shift feels like neutrality, an absence of emotional charge. Spiritually, it feels like flow, the effortless unfolding of events in perfect timing. Both describe the same phenomenon, your nervous system and the universe speaking the same language. You no longer act from reaction, you act from rhythm. You no longer chase outcomes. They gravitate toward your stillness. It is not that life suddenly becomes perfect, it becomes precise. Every challenge carries meaning. Every pause holds purpose. The old pattern of struggle gives way to the new pattern of symmetry. In truth, reality has always been neutral. It is consciousness that gives it tone. When you were steeped in fear, you saw everything through defense and doubt. When you return to peace, the same world begins to reveal its quiet order. This is not delusion, it is perception healed. The external world has not changed, your alignment has. And alignment reorganizes experience. Timing begins to feel guided. You start arriving in the right place without effort. Conversations unfold with synchronicity. Opportunities find you when you're no longer trying to find them. Because the moment you stop vibrating at fear, you stop signaling urgency to the field. You stop broadcasting confusion, and the universe, relieved of distortion, reflects coherence back to you. This is how the rearrangement works, not by chance, but by law. Energy does not lie, it simply mirrors. Fear collapses probability, peace expands it, and the moment you step into trust, the quantum field, that living intelligence of creation, responds in kind. Life bends around your vibration. The right doors open, not because you force them, but because you finally match their frequency. The reordering of reality is not something you do. It is something you allow. When the internal order returns, the external follows. Because the universe is not outside of you. It is moving with you. And when you let go of fear, it finally moves freely. There comes a moment when all searching stops. Not because you found everything, but because you finally understand there was never anything missing. Stillness arrives, not as an achievement, but as a return, the homecoming of awareness to itself. And in that stillness, something extraordinary happens. Fear loses its language. It cannot exist in the same space as presence. True power is not force. It is not control, dominance, or the ability to make life bend to your will. True power is the unshakable calm that remains when the need to control dissolves. It is the awareness that no storm can move the ocean that holds it. When you rest deeply enough within yourself, reality no longer feels like a test. It feels like a reflection. You stop trying to manage existence, and instead you begin to embody it. Stillness is the final rearrangement. It is where the nervous system, the mind, and the soul find coherence. No conflict. No division, just flow. Every cell in your body remembers safety. Every thought slows into clarity. You no longer reach for alignment. You are alignment. And from that stillness, creation emerges naturally. Words, ideas, relationships, opportunities, all begin to arise without friction, as if the universe itself is exhaling through you. In stillness, there is strength, not fragility. Because the one who is still cannot be manipulated by chaos. When you are rooted in the now, nothing external can dictate your peace. The noise of the world loses its command because you no longer vibrate in reaction. You have stepped out of the battlefield of fear and into the sanctuary of awareness. And awareness, when embodied, becomes the purest form of protection. Psychology calls it regulation. Spirituality calls it enlightenment. But both are describing the same phenomenon. The nervous system attuned to the truth that life is safe here, now. You no longer anticipate danger, you sense intelligence. You no longer chase signs, you become one. This is the end of seeking and the beginning of being. Stillness does not mean withdrawal from life. It means participation without attachment. It means loving without clinging, moving without rushing, creating without needing to control the outcome. This is what freedom feels like. The ability to remain centered in any moment, knowing that nothing real can ever be taken from you. Fear loses its power when you no longer resist it. It becomes silence. And in that silence, the universe speaks, not in words, but in rhythm. You feel the pulse of creation moving through you, the same pulse that animates stars and breathes life into galaxies. That pulse is peace. That peace is power. And that power quiet, steady, infinite, is who you've been all along.